chat. How we doing? Hello, hello. Pretty in pink. I do look very pink today. This basement is very hot. I don't appreciate how hot the basement is. Hello, yes, secret stream. Well, I'm anxious about the end of the month, so, you know, I gotta get some extra streams in. Also, why am I in gutter chat? I don't know. That's your choice, Rundo. Hello, GamerG. Hello, Erica. Hello, Rundo. Hello, Phoenix. Hello, Paladin Lost. Hello, Punky Gal. Hello, one and all. How we all doing today, folks? Yeah, that's right. We got a secret stream today. Hello, Neuron. Hope you are keeping hydrated. I am, kind of. Hey, Storma. How you doing? Well then, guess I'm here now. Hell yeah, you are. So, let me just pull up one more thing here, because I would like to play some video games while we talk about politics and such today. That's my goal. Today's Saturday. I would really like to just relax. But let's see. Hello, Robert Adset. How you doing? Video games. But not right now. Well, kind of right now. How we all doing, folks? How's your weekends? How was your weekend? There we go. Since somebody asked, I was saving some oil back for your birthday present. Would you rather just have monies? You know, you save that for birthday. You save that for my birthday. That'll make it. My birthday is going to be a very hard day for me. You know, my birthday, unfortunately, relatively coincides with the date I came out to my dad, and so it's going to be a hard time. I don't spend my birthdays with my family anymore, at least not my biological family. I do spend them with the family I've found and made, though, so that is very important to me. But it's still something that hurts my heart a lot. Hey, it's a Ro. How you doing? D&D went well. Damn, it was hard, but was great. Were player comments. Hey, Storma, are you also a forever DM? Okay, but I'll see what's in the strategic oiler reserve. Hell yeah. Oh, it's okay, Phoenix. I won't be sad about it until the day of, okay? Family's more than blood. I know that. It's just that, like, you know, it's not a good time. What games? So I've been thinking I might play some Dome Keeper. Dome Keeper's really chill. Could be quite fun. Or we could continue playing XCOM. But I feel like stream interest in XCOM has waned over time. But maybe that is incorrect. Want to adopt people for a day? Jack knows she can always call me daddy. Daddy. Something about blood and covenants and more blood, I think. Jesus. Hearts of Iron 4? I actually don't have Hearts of Iron 4. Hello, Distron. I was thinking I'd start with Dome Keeper while we do some stuff, and then we'll get into. So, I guess I'll just the reveal time. So, folks, apparently there are some signs that this South Korean room temperature superconductor thing could actually be real. Notably, apparently there are scientists currently squabbling in South Korea over competing claims to have invented it, which means that clearly there's enough there from people in the know that they want to take credit for its discovery. So that could be a big thing. Paladin Lost, if you're feeling soupy, go with the foe. If you're feeling anything else, go with the tacos. Gamer G, no. You either have to be a Hearts of Iron 4 trans or a Fallout New Vegas trans. There are a few others, the odd Stellaris trans. There was Aliens 2, lots of science news. I guess Aliens is pseudoscience, kind of, but still. Yeah, none of the. I do not believe any of the alien stuff that's been coming out. It's nonsense. If it's real, it changes everything we know about the universe. Yeah, so extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and all that. So I'm not going to take that without all of the salt on the planet. A Sins of a Solar Empire pansexual? Ooh, a deep cut. Sins of a Solar Empire was a really great game. Superconductor drama? Yeah, Christinos. Hard West 2? I think I'm going to continue our XCOM journey because people paid to be involved in that. So we're gonna run that game into the ground. We are either going to have victory over the alien or we are going to have crippling defeat. Yeah, exactly, Robert Ad said. I've looked into it very briefly, and basically everything I saw was a lot of nothing. A lot of, I saw something 40 years ago, type shit. Dark Strike Net, hello. Hi. How do you do? All right. So basically, chat. There are these things, okay? They're called super magnets, okay? They're called super magnets. Vosh did a whole rant-a-roo about the aliens, did he? Yeah. The only evidence was his Tic Tac sighting, and that is so easily debunked. I'm at the office management sim. I'm at the alien hunt. I'm at the combination office management alien hunt sim. Yeah. Okay. See ya, Distron. So basically there are these things called superconductors. And usually they have to be cooled almost to absolute zero in order to do their silly little thing where they levitate and also operate in ultra-efficient manners when it comes to essentially shifting electricity around. By the way, I hate you. I can't get the Skibbity Toilet song out of my head. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. It was for charity. It's for a good cause. Now, these superconductors, contrary to popular belief, do not wear spandex and direct trains around the country, but they should But instead, they are essentially like the holy grail for computing, energy grid applications, charging your phone basically instantly, like just actual super future shit. Like fusion reactors would become, I would say, almost incredibly easy to build. Um, if I'm going to be very simplistic about it, like the applications for a room temperature superconductor are immense. Like essentially, you could have Jetson level technology. We're talking George Jetson just hovering around in his little like flying car thing. Okay, that's the level of technology we're talking about. Um, Superconductors would be insanely helpful for building maglev trains. Yep, it would also make hover trains possible, and honestly, the preferable option. Now, what we learned the other day was that there was a team in South Korea who was claiming to have invented the first room temperature superconductor, meaning they don't have to cool it down to almost absolute zero, which is an incredible claim. The current superconductors we have right now are things that require immense amounts of energy in order to cool them to those temperatures. So I looked at that and was like, wow, this is big if true, but man, the asterisk next to that is colossal, because again, we're talking like something that would instantly win someone the Nobel Prize and also like kick human technology into like the next stage, like the next industrial revolution type situation. But very, very, very skeptical about all of that. So one thing that makes me a little less skeptical is a new revelations, and the guy who goes by Frank New explained some of this in a short 2-minute video. So let's take a look at it and see what conclusions we come to, huh? There we go. Really? You gonna do me dirty like this?
But you probably haven't heard news about the room temperature superconductor, but you probably haven't heard all the drama behind it. So recently a team of researchers claimed that they created the first materials that could perfectly conduct electricity at ambient pressure and room temperature. And it's been met by a lot of skepticism from physicists. However, there is one major green flag. There's a lot of infighting and rushing to get credit for the experiment. 2 separate papers have been submitted just hours apart. One by a 3-man team, thus qualifying it for a Nobel Prize, and the other paper that was submitted later has 6 authors. The theory is that the papers were not ready for publication, but someone was trying to take all the credit. The backstory here is that Lee and Kim had both been working on this material since 1999 on and off, and though never successful, in 2018 they got another round of funding to try again. But it comes with some strings. A third person named Kwon is added to the mix. So Lee becomes the CEO, Kwon the CTO, and Kim the research director because he's the youngest. It takes them 3 years to figure out the production process. They realize they'll need a Western co-author for the papers, just because of how the industry works, and they bring in Kyung Tak, who is a Korean-American professor at the College of William & Mary. The patent filing takes place in 2023, and Kim starts to get nervous. He's afraid that the work will leak, that someone will steal it. Kyung Tak is...
Yeah, so first of all, the fact that people are trying to steal credit from this is very, very interesting. Additionally, that they patented some aspect of this material. I'm not entirely sure what the patent law is. As far as I'm aware, you can't patent a material, but perhaps they are patenting like some form, like official form of production or something. I don't know the details on the patent.
Says that more work is needed to finish the publication. There's still a lot of work to be done. However, on July 22nd, Kwon decides to publish the paper with only 3 authors, Lee, Kim, and himself. A reminder, a Nobel Prize can only be shared by 3 people. Kyung Tak gets a ping from a Korean contact and he immediately rushes to push out his own paper. deliberately leaving Quan out of the authors list. So
No, Paladin.
President G.I. Joe BWA Den has allowed me to tap into the strategic oiler reserve. Bawahaha, 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 BWA.
Paladin, thank you for kicking us off on stream today with an incredibly generous $75 dono. My goodness. BWA energy off the charts over here. Yeah, Bruno Surge, superconductors are this is crazy. So if they legitimately have something, then they would definitely have reason to believe that they are up for a Nobel Prize. And there's only really a reason to have this level of infighting in a team if they are trying to ensure that they get the Nobel Prize, you know?
this is a pretty good sign in the sense of why would you go through all this trouble if the technology didn't actually work?
I'm not watching Skibbity Toilet 53 or 52.
I've heard news about the
God. Unless you guys give me a lot of money, I'm not watching the new episodes of Skibbity Toilet. I've already exposed myself far too much. So yeah, look, I don't know if this is real or not, but if it is, like, our computers are about to go through crazy levels of change. Your computer, if this material gets integrated into, you know, graphics cards and processing, is going to be insanely efficient. They're going to make like smaller and smaller devices like this. It's going to be crazy. Assuming they aren't fooling themselves, N-rays come to mind. I don't even know what an N-ray is. Quantum computers? I have no idea what the application for quantum computing would be, but I'm sure, like, maybe that's like the breakthrough that miniaturizes quantum computers to the point where you can have like a personal quantum computer. I have no idea what the implication is for quantum computing. What are N-rays? Hypothesized form of radiation. Okay. Okay. What are they? What is the significance? Oh, N-ray is like an imaginary form of radiation? Weird. The science of things that aren't so. Traditional superconductivity is reliant on specific macroscopic quantum effects of cooling an appropriate substance to near absolute zero. This would be an entirely new form of superconductivity, which is incredibly big if true. Yeah, no, like, lazy AJ, if this is true, and if it is also true that they've been working on this since the 90s, like, that also lends a lot of credence to it, the fact that they've been working on it for like 30 years. And if, like, it changes fundamentally, like, how our technology is going to work. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, folks. I have today 2 debates that we can watch while playing XCOM. One is between Patrick Bet David and a guy named Roland Martin, who is a reporter who apparently leaked the Hillary Clinton town hall questions to Donna Brazile. And the other debate is Krystal and Kyle debating Sitch and Adam about which side of the political spectrum is more authoritarian. So what kind of brainworm do you want today? Do you want the Krystal Kyle and Friends brainworm, or the Sitch and Adam brainworm, respectively? Or do you want the Patrick Bet David brainworm? Which would you like? Going with Zooted Kyle? Oh damn! Oh, you know what? There are too many. Oh god. Okay, You know what? I'm not gonna ask. We're actually gonna have a vote. /vote. Krystal and Kyle, or which will we watch? Question mark. Krystal and Kyle, or PBD and Roland. Here we go. I think okay. You guys only have a few seconds. Get your votes in. 1, 2, 1, 2. You just type 1. Yep. We figured out polls. You only have 10 seconds left. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And we have Krystal and Kyle with all of 8 votes cast. I'm sorry. If you were too late to get your number in, well, that's just the pain of non-mandatory voting. Here we go. Krystal Kyle, let's go.
Not, banned from certain treatments by the state in a blanket fashion. I mean, I do feel...
And not trans activists, though, because like this case, we're talking about the authoritarianism of the left. If the trans activists...
And the right.
Well, yes.
Oh, cool. It's about trans people. Damn it. I wonder if there's a... better one I can have here. Nope. Okay, we gotta watch it on their channel. Fine.
Yeah,
well,
and doctors and families should be the ones making the decisions, not, banned from certain treatments by the state in a blanket fashion. I mean, I do feel...
And not trans activists, though, because like this case, we're talking about the authoritarianism of the left. If the trans activists...
And the right.
Well, yes.
I guess the authoritarian trans activists. God damn it. God damn it.
But in this specific case, I think it's the left. I doubt it's right-wing authoritarians that are shutting down Ken Zucker's clinic.
3, 2.
God damn, that was a cool intro, though. That was a really cool little intro animation. I need to get me one of those.
1. Welcome, Sitch and Adam of the Sitch and Adam Show. As I've already called you 3 times so far in our intro, my favorite centrists. It's good to see you guys.
What's up? How's it going?
Good to be here.
Yeah. So we talked, you guys were on the show, I don't know how long ago it was now, 6 months or something like that. And Krystal wasn't here that episode. She's excited to be here this episode. So it's I was really looking forward to this. I find this conversation exciting. And I feel like it's rare that you can have like good faith disagreement with people who are coming from an honest place. Usually this topic in particular is so nuclear red hot that it's impossible to like, find some common ground on this stuff. So we wanted to discuss, actually, before we get into the topic, I told Krystal I was going to do this before. I know you guys are big Game of Thrones fans. I am like the #1 Game of Thrones fan. So yeah. I wanted to ask
belatedly,
you both,
yes.
Your favorite, belatedly. I didn't see it when it first came out. I saw it later, which was good because I got to watch it all like one day after the next. I got to finish it pretty quickly.
Has Krystal stolen all of Kyle's brains?
Adam, you first.
I genuinely have no idea. Like, I think they're good. I think Kyle's like a relatively good egg, but I genuinely don't know what Krystal or Kyle's stances are on trans people. But I guess we gonna learn today.
I know.
Yeah, I'm not...
Also, folks, we got a white name in chat. If anyone would like to help a fellow chatter out, toss a sub over to It's a Roro.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe
cool
I'm
as far
not
as
the
I
biggest
know.
Game of Thrones fan after all.
You watched the whole...
Give us a few faves then.
I watched
You watched the
yeah,
whole thing,
Ned
didn't you,
Stark.
like, in like a week.
Ned Stark is obviously completely lovable, but I feel like he's like the go-to that everybody loves. So I'll
It's
just
like too obvious.
yeah, exactly. But Ned Stark is obviously lovable. Sitch and I have talked extensively about Ned Stark and the contradictions of Ned Stark in the terms of like selectorate theory and Dictator's Handbook and stuff. So I'll just go with Ned Stark, obviously.
What do you think?
Sitch, what do you think?
Well, if we're talking about the book, Jamie is clearly my favorite character, but in the show he kind of sucks. He's very different. In the show, Ned or Tyrion probably, but book Jamie is the best character easily.
Krystal, I don't know if I ever asked you this question before. Who's your favorite?
My favorite. I liked Catelyn a lot, and I also liked Tyrion. I like Tyrion
You're
a
like
lot
the one Catelyn fan, by the way.
as well. Really,
Nobody
people
likes
don't like
Catelyn.
Catelyn. I don't know. She's very strong. Like she's a mom. I don't know. I related to her.
She also gets like everybody killed with her decisions.
Does she though? Because she's
Yes.
the one who no, but she told
No, wait,
Rob not
yeah,
to
that's not
marry that
fair.
bitch. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
she tells
She's the
Rob
reason
to be
Rob
careful.
Went to King's
Right.
Landing. Ned wasn't going to go to King's Landing.
No.
Oh, well.
Rob screwed that up for himself. She was in there like, a great
don't care
personal
about
cost
any of
to
this.
herself, being like, this is a bad idea, and he's a prideful man, and you're like screwing around with this is not a good idea. So this is all on Rob.
I was under the
I
impression
believe you're
Catelyn.
blaming Catelyn
No,
for this
I
shit.
thought. Wait a second. I could have sworn in
Misogyny.
the show.
Oh my god.
Thank you.
Didn't see the
Thank
Barbie
you.
movie. Blames
Catelyn got
Catelyn.
Ned to go to King's Landing. The Catelyn was the one like, you have to go, and he was like, fuck.
Well, he's
all right,
gonna
fine.
have to go.
Well, you want to know what's
After he was
interesting?
told about John Aaron. Anyway, we're getting way deep in the weeds. Let me just give you guys my. So first of all, I'm 100% with Adam. I have 1 and 1A. 1 is Ned. 2 is actually Tywin Lannister. I think the acting job in the show from the character
Good
that played Tywin Lannister is fucking
Yeah,
just
he's
like the
good, too.
best villain slash like he's like a villain, but he's kind of not, because you see his code is like family oriented and he sticks by it 100%, but that leads to very dark places, does the red wedding, etc. Anyway, we could probably talk about this for 5 hours, but let's go ahead and get to the main topic.
Well, hold on though.
go ahead,
Since
go
we
ahead.
mentioned Barbie, who's your favorite Barbie?
Oh,
Commander, there's a resistance from the white names. Oh damn. Oh damn. Oh damn. I'm being used to shill for the streamer. I will not stand for the white name erasure. Finally, we have the underground white name resistance cornered. It's now or never, chat. Annihilate the white names. Bottom left? Nani?
Ken, obviously.
Ken, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's like by a mile.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like any of them, to be honest with you.
Wow.
They all irritated me in
Well-
different ways. But yeah, Ken was maybe the least irritating.
Well, and I just want
I
you to
didn't
know,
see the movie, I can't.
Krystal, that in the book, it's the roles between Cat and Ned are reversed. Ned wants to go to King's Landing, and Catelyn doesn't want him to go to.
Oh,
King's
really?
Landing. Yeah. So.
We just
yeah,
started.
we just started. I don't remember that. But I'll
book.
take your word for it.
So,
But it
but
could have just like gone over my head.
yeah.
All right, so let's get to the main topic. That was fun. We honestly could have scheduled a whole Game of Thrones thing. That would have been fun too.
We'll have to
Did
do
you
that.
Well,
Alright,
Game
so
of
is it
Thrones
now or something?
ties into authoritarianism pretty well, actually.
Oh,
That's
so.
true.
That's why I love it.
Nice
It's got,
segue.
it's rife with political themes. That's
Of course.
phenomenal. So here's the question that we wanted to dig into: who is more authoritarian, the woke or the anti-woke? And
First of all, this is so I don't know, milk toast, like as a debate concept, but like all right, I'm here. You got me. I'm watching.
I was going to give you my position. Krystal will give you hers. You guys can lay out yours. But first, I'll just give you my definition of wokeness, so you know like what I'm working off of here. I think there's one definition which has like a positive connotation, then there's another which has a negative connotation. The positive one was like, if you're woke, you're alert to injustice and trying to change it. The negative definition, I would say, is authoritarian in service of perceived social justice ends. And so typically when I use woke, I am typically using it more as a pejorative. I mean, people who are authoritarian in service of what they think are social justice ends. So with that definition, I would claim today, my thesis is this. I think both sides are authoritarian. Many on both sides can be authoritarian, although you can be woke or anti-woke and not be authoritarian.
Okay, he's not wrong about this technically, but like let's not pretend that the far bigger tendency towards authoritarianism is not on the conservative end of things.
But I'm more concerned about the anti-woke authoritarians because from my perspective, it manifests in legislation much more often, which directly impacts people. Whereas on the other side, I think that wokeness can be very authoritarian, but it usually manifests more through culture, which is bad, but I just don't think the stakes are as high. So I know that, Sitch, for example, I know you like to focus more on the culture and not as much on the legislation, which might explain some of the disconnect here. But tell me your thoughts on this. Since I mentioned Sitch, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on who's more authoritarian and why?
Well, first I'll say I like your definition of woke. The one that I use is generally that woke is the idea that liberalism won't solve our social problems, and that something further to the left is required.
What the fuck are any of these attempts to define what woke is? Woke doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore. It's been completely obliterated. Other than like some vague hand gesture towards like people who want to treat gays okay. You know, like that's about it.
Culturally. It's funny that what you said about like how the wokeness manifests, or the authoritarianness of wokeness manifests on the left culturally and if through institutions. On the right, it's kind of manifesting through the law. Because I said the same thing myself several times.
Cool.
And I agree with that framing. However, to be a stick in the mud, I have to question, what is the point of framing the question as like who's more authoritarian in the first place?
So, I mean, I guess in my mind, the reason I asked the question that way is because of that distinction, that I think the anti-woke people are enforcing it through law. So I think by its very nature, I would consider that more authoritarian, because to me, the bar towards authoritarian is, are you legally imposing this on people?
Well, and if I can chime in here, I mean, just in terms of my own personal journey with regards to my view on wokeness, I feel like there's been an arc where there has been huge overreach and more authoritarianism on the side of the quote unquote woke that has, you know, led to a backlash that has led to even more authoritarian tactics from the anti-woke. And, you know, people can hold whatever views they want to hold, good, bad, indifferent, like, you know, and it's fine.
Wait, okay, so we've already left the realm of like actual political position, and now it's debating whether or not the nebulous term woke, those who are nebulously termed woke, are more authoritarian. What the fuck does that mean? Like if you're saying, oh well, the idea of woke stands in for a belief that liberal policies aren't going to fix systemic issues, then why aren't you use the terms that you want to use instead of this weird buzzword that means anything to like 95% of people?
To have a spectrum of views that are out there, whether I agree with them or not. When it becomes a problem that we should care about as a democratic society, in my opinion, is when it goes from a view I'm advocating for something I'm going to use authoritarian tactics to achieve. So I think that's why the focus on, all right, who's leveraging more authoritarianism in service of their ideology at this point, that's why the question to me is relevant.
Well, I agree with what you said completely, Krystal, about how the wokeness of the left is what's created the anti-woke right-wing backlash, especially the legal backlash that we're seeing in all these state legislatures. And I would just be cautious when we're kind of talking about this question, because I don't think it should be used like, oh, the right wing is more authoritarian with their anti-wokeness, so like they're the bad guys. That should be what should be focused on, when it should clearly, in my mind, if the left wokeness is what's creating the anti-woke authoritarian backlash in the law, both these things need to stop, essentially.
Sure, but people are responsible for their own actions. Like, the fact that someone did something that pisses you off doesn't mean like you're justified in becoming an authoritarian.
Well, no, it doesn't justify it like morally, but when we're talking about like
morally, but
how coalitions of power form, right? You know, I think this is true for Trump. Not as much, like 100%, but definitely I think Trump was able to run, and is definitely running now. And you see with DeSantis, though he's kind of floundering nationally, kind of trying to run on this energy that if the mainstream American, the norm,
I would love to be playing MechWarrior 5. Krillin Almighty. Also, I love your username. Krillin deserves more respect.
the undecided voter, if they're out there and they perceive that the left has lost its mind and is crazy, then they're just going to go to the right, and they might not perceive sort of the legal authoritarianism that we're talking about.
So I want to get Adam in here in a second, but I just wanted to respond to what Krystal and Sitch said, because I actually slightly disagree with you when you said the wokeness from the right, or excuse me, the wokeness from the left led to the right-wing backlash. I actually don't totally agree with that. I think that the right has sort of hyper-fixated on some extremes on the left, and then they just sort of act like it's the entire left. And so then it leads to the backlash. So it's like they're perceiving it's the whole left going insane and being authoritarian and hyper-focusing on social justice stuff, but really they're just nitpicking like 5% of something and acting like it's 100% of the left, and that's what then leads to. So it could be a backlash, but I think it's mostly sort of like delusional in a sense, that it's like as big a problem as they say it is.
Well, we're also talking about cynical political actors who see something that has energy on their side and that they're going to use to build a national profile a la Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, that I totally agree with, yeah. All right, Adam, jump in. We haven't heard from you yet.
Well, you pitch this problem to me, and I object to a little bit of the framing of woke and anti-woke, because, I do perceive woke as like the authoritarian left. I've never really perceived of the right, people on the right who are against wokeness as authoritarians, because you can have people on the right that are against authoritarianism on the left that aren't authoritarians, like they're not taking extreme positions on gay marriage or abortion or anything like that. You know, they're reasonable people on the right that are against what's going on the left.
The one definition that has been offered of woke is that it is the rejection of like liberal policies to that the rejection of the idea that liberalism will fix systemic inequalities. This is simultaneously hilarious and incredibly stupid. I know, I bring you guys the best content.
I do think, I think part of the conflict that you will probably perceive with the legislation aspect of it is that the legislation affects people's lives more, but I think there's a perception issue here, because I think the authoritarian tactics that are on the left are in everybody's face all day long at work, and they're not necessarily thinking about the abortion laws or the push to make gay marriage illegal again, or these CRT bans. They're thinking about, I have to walk on eggshells at work and completely censor myself because I might offend somebody, or some grievance archaeologist might come along and dig up something I said on the internet 10 years ago and try to get me fired. So it's a much more tangible thing for people in their daily lives. And I think that's why a lot of times there's this big push against left-wing authoritarianism that is more present, even though you might say that it's not as important socially or legislatively.
So basically, to sum up your argument, and correct me if I'm wrong, the argument is sort of like culture, in your opinion, supersedes legislation because it seemingly affects more people, because culture affects everybody, whereas legislation might affect small pockets of people. I'm not sure I agree with that for one point, but the other point of
go ahead. You're saying that it affects more people. It does affect more people, right?
Well, I would say when it legally affects somebody, that has a bigger impact than just socially or culturally affecting people. Because you could, feel bad about somebody going on a cancel culture crusade against you online, and that can suck. And I don't want to downplay that. But I think it's a lot worse when you talk about legislation going after people in a way where you used to be able to take an abortion pill in state X, and now you can't take an abortion pill in state X. But look,
well, that's only going to matter if you need an abortion or in a situation where you think you might need an abortion.
That's not the only issue where I would say the anti-woke people have become authoritarian. So, like, I broke this down into a number of different issues. So, like, book bans is one thing. We could discuss that. I think there's a lot of book banning coming from the...
I think the immediate mistake here is ceding the ground to this entire conversation, to the ceding the framing of this entire conversation to... Okay, it's not left versus right. It's not conservative versus liberal. It's woke versus non-woke. Like that is immediately like a huge problem with the conversation.
Anti-woke right. LGBTQ restrictions, we can get into that if you want, where there's a lot of that coming from the right. There's even protest restrictions in a lot of red states where they're cracking down on free protests in the wake of George Floyd, where there were some riots, but they do these bills that are overreaching where it goes after protests too. You brought up restrictions when it comes to abortion. I think that's a fair thing to bring up too. I even think things like the drug war, which are, I think it's an authoritarian thing to lock somebody up for putting something in their body when they're not hurting anybody else. I think that also affects that, that sort of led to mass incarceration, which impacts a lot of people. So look, I take your point in the sense that culturally, almost by definition, it will affect like everybody, right?
Yeah.
And legislatively, maybe it doesn't. I guess my point is, even though it might be smaller numerically, I think it's like quantitatively a bigger impact. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, it's
qualitatively, my bad. Qualitatively a bigger impact.
Also, we're about to attack the one of the chosen strongholds. It's a big day.
I think it's just a tougher sell politically, obviously, and I think that's why the right is gaining ground on these issues legislatively, because they're able to do it, behind behind the perception of the general public. I want to say before we move forward, I'm pro-choice. Like I'm not against limiting abortion. I'm pro-gay marriage. So on those issues, I am definitely on your side. But I do think that there are people on the right that are, in favor of those things as well, that are not necessarily against them. I think it's like a far right thing that they want to ban all abortion and re-ban gay marriage and stuff like that. But I'll let you guys continue.
I think that's true. And I mean, the polling bears that out. But mostly what we're talking about is what's happening at the Republican elite level, where they're in positions of power to, make laws and enforce them and all the rest. And I think what you're saying assumes that there isn't an aspiration, at least on the right, to not only have sort of authoritarian legislation that is quote unquote anti-woke, but they also want the culture. I mean, it's not that they want like free and fair exchange of ideas. There is an overt effort to, we want to be the ones to police the language and police the culture and what people are allowed to say and what sort of dissent they're allowed to have. So I'll give you a perfect example. You probably saw this. There's a whole thing going on over at Texas A&M where first you had a university president who was forced to resign because it came out basically, they changed the deal of a New York Times, former New York Times journalist who was going to be brought into the school in this prominent position. They watered it down under political pressure. That happened. Then you have another Texas A&M professor who criticized the lieutenant governor of the state and has now been suspended and is being investigated over that critique. Wow. The perfect example that I really love, which I always thought sort of said it all, is, Mike Lindell, my pillow guy. Not that he's like, speaks for everyone, but I just thought this was sort of emblematic. He was setting up his own social media platform, and he's like, it's a free speech platform, but to me that means no taking the Lord's name in vain, no pornography. Like it was free speech, but as I define what is acceptable. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an assumption in what you said that there isn't also the goal, and that goal is being fulfilled now, to also take control of the culture in a very similar sort of authoritarian fashion.
Well, I think the way that I see these power struggles work is that at all times, there's always extremists in every interest group and everyone on the left and the right. They're always constantly trying to pull society in their direction. Mm-hmm. But something environmentally has to occur that allows that energy to kind of reach into the mainstream and then allow the mainstream to go in that direction. So like there's always going to be, the people, the far right people who do want to bring the theocracy or, whatever it is they want to bring into America. And they're always pulling. And then I look at it like, well, what's allowing that energy to suddenly like sink its hooks into the consciousness of the mainstream American? And I think, in my opinion, the reason that the right is able to do this, I agree that this is done cynically. There's a big problem right now with the right where, economically, the right-wing populists and the right-wing neocons don't agree on a lot of issues. And so that is part of why, it's perfect for them. It's actually perfect for them to fixate on wokeness and social issues because that's where there's an agreement. And if we
Right.
lived in like a hypothetical world where wokeness didn't exist, it didn't come about in like 2014-ish, I don't know what the Republican Party would be doing right now at all.
Right.
I have no clue. But because that energy does exist, because the wokeness does exist, it seems like that's what's giving the right the ability to do all this. And that's kind of why, when we're talking about like the issue here about who's more authoritarian, and I don't know if you've been listening to, the Young Turks and Anna Kasparian have been kind of bringing this point up a lot recently, which is that it just seems like when the left defends a lot of these woke issues, it just keeps giving the right easy victories it just tees them up essentially for easy victories, one after the other.
Can I say, one thing I'm curious about is whether you think we've reached peak wokeness, because I actually reject the idea that at this point, this is the anti-woke stuff is even working out that well for the right. I mean,
DeSantis was floundering, and that was his whole thing. He just changed his strategy to put woke on as his fourth biggest issue. It used to be number one. Go ahead.
He says it in like every friggin' sentence. He clearly has decided like this is the thing, and I think for part of the reason that you're saying, which is that he's trying to stitch together this coalition of people who don't like Trump with people who used to like Trump and people who are moderate and people who are hard right and whatever. And so he's like wokeness. That's the place where maybe we can meet. It's obviously not even working out with the Republican base. There's also some signs like a bunch of these corporations are firing now their chief diversity officer because they figured out that, these trainings actually actively make people more racist in the workplace and are not working out, and the whole thing is just a damn grift. So you've got that. You also have on the electoral side, it just doesn't seem to have the juice that the Republican Party seemed to think that it was going to. I mean, 2022, there was a lot of money that was spent on like anti-trans, anti-CRT, et cetera. It obviously didn't work out for them. And then, as I was saying with the Ron DeSantis stuff. So do you think that we've kind of reached peak wokeness and we're on the other side of that?
Well, I think we definitely reached, the peak wokeness of like when the things were the wokest has already passed. Because it does seem like not just the Republicans are pushing
It's
back.
always wokest before the dawn, chat.
It does seem like a lot of people are just getting tired of dealing with wokeness, which, to me, that's a great thing. So yeah, we could be reaching that point already. So going forward, it might be less and less advantageous for Republicans to use these issues. But with DeSantis, I'm skeptical that him having problems nationally has anything to do with the wokeness.
Okay,
I think
folks,
it's just,
we're going in.
I said this from
could
like
end
day
poorly,
one.
but we're
I said,
going in.
DeSantis has the
God
charisma
help
of
us
wet
all.
cardboard. I just don't perceive him like being able to go on a national stage and really get energy. Especially
Also, if we have a squad wipe on this mission, I'm gonna be so sad. I'm gonna be so sad, chat. Literally, we got Mint Kuro on the mission. We got Paladin Lost. We got Spitfire. We got all the homies.
when he's going up against Trump, which if you love or hate Trump,
yet.
you have to acknowledge that he's very charismatic. He has a lot of energy, behind him. And I can't see a world in which how DeSantis can stand up to Trump in that arena.
So let me jump in here because there's a bunch of interesting things I want to respond to. So I think there's some level of like default anti-wokeness that every reasonable person sort of has, right? So to give a couple examples of this is they had polled the term Latinx to see if people are like it, don't like it, use it, don't use it, whatever. It was like under 10%. I don't remember the exact number, 9%, 6%, 3%. It was something like that. Nobody's buying the Latinx stuff. So that's like a default, like when people are like, just don't change our language colossally overnight and pretend like it's some like crusade for morality, because it's not. Stop it. There's also, what was the other example I wanted to give? Defund the police. Defund the police polls at like 18% or something like that, because I think the default perspective for most Americans is like, well, of course we need police. So if you say defund the police, regardless of what point you think you might be making, it sounds like I want to abolish the police and have no police. And people just aren't on board with that. So I think there's like a default anti-wokeness. But I think the problem with DeSantis and many on the right who are on this like anti-woke crusade is that they've started overreaching colossally to the point where they are using the legislation that I talked about before, which is actually authoritarian, which mirrors the tactics of many on the woke side. So, what was the example? Ron DeSantis is currently waging a lawsuit against Bud Light over the ad with Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah.
So you have a trans person in an ad and you want to wage a lawsuit over this? Like, that strikes me as those shrieking social justice warriors online with the blue hair and the septum ring in 2012 who were telling you, don't do this, you can't do that, stop doing this. It's like Ron DeSantis has become that person, but on the right. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. You know, I thought like with the whole "Don't Say Gay" bill, which was the parental rights education. You know, part of that bill I agreed with, which was that if a school is going to transition or socially transition, I should say, a child, that they should definitely have to notify the parents. And that's wild that wouldn't be the case. And the reason they passed that in Florida was because there was a school that was doing this without notifying the parents, and the child attempted to commit suicide.
Okay, just full disclosure. I don't know who needs to know this, but schools can't prescribe hormone replacement therapy. That's not actually a thing that schools can do. So, this is either a complete fabrication, or there are a lot of other details that are not being shared about that story.
And so, like, I agree. Like, what happens is like this, like they do something that seems reasonable, but then they always take it too far because then they add the element of like, well, you can't talk about, you know, gayness existing essentially until ninth grade or whatever the frame point is. So that seems to be the case in all politics. It's like, oh, you agree like with some piece of legislation, but then someone always takes it too far. But even though, but just to go back a second for the peak wokeness, even though I think we have sort of gone past peak wokeness, I mean, it's still happening. It's still an issue. Like it was only a few months ago, I think that it was Uber, I believe, fired or suspended their DEI chief, not because they're like, oh, you're too woke. They fired the DEI chief, who I believe was Asian, because she was trying to push back against people being racist against white people at Uber. And this was this year, only a few months ago. So this, like, these issues are still cropping up. And I think to Adam's point, what he said earlier is that even if this legislation is, you know, more, quote, authoritarian because it's a law as opposed to someone being fired from their job or the cultural pressure, it's still, the left version of it still is like in everyone's face or in a lot of people's face at all times.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. You know, where I think the normal, like, well-adjusted human American is, you know, in real life, non-online, super online interactions, they tend to grant the people around them some grace, you know, some charity. Like there's a ability to screw up and apologize and move forward. And the problem I always had with wokeness was that there was no grace, that it's like anything you said, you screwed up. Like,
see, again, if the definition of woke was actually like a rejection of liberalism, like fixing systemic issues, if that was the actual definition of woke, then like what Krystal just said doesn't make sense. So they're not even, like, this is the problem with it, like, ceding to this framing. It makes the entire conversation nonsensical.
Like, that's it, you're done, you're in the bad circle, you're out. And as someone who's been a, you know, lifelong, like, liberal, progressive, leftist, whatever, wherever I was on my own political arc, like, that's a polar opposite of the way that I viewed the world. I always felt that people should be granted that charity, that there should be redemption. Even if you committed a heinous crime, I thought, you know, if you've paid your debt to society and you can reform yourself, I always believed in that vision of grace and charity. But now I do see the exact thing happening, you know, on the right that concerned me among my own side. And like, I feel like the Libs of TikTok account is the perfect example of this. Because you're talking about cancellation coming from the quote-unquote left of like getting people fired and digging up their old social media, etc. Like that's what that whole account is dedicated to. Finding someone who's saying something that is weird or can be taken out of context to seem weird, hunting that person down, ruining their life, putting it in front of as many people as you possibly can. And it's not an accident that that account has become like a huge success on the right at this moment. I mean, that is literally the same cancellation tactics that were so decried when they were used by people who were, you know, on the left, now being deployed by a large and at this point powerful account on the right.
Isn't the left though always separates cancel culture into cancel culture and accountability culture? And I have I look at cancel culture as trying to cancel people over things that are untrue, basically digging up evidence of racism, sexism, or homophobia that's kind of on the line, borderline, and you dig into the person personally and you find out, well, this person's not really a racist or a sexist at all. They're just framing this person as a racist or a sexist to cancel them, which I think is completely different than kind of the libs of TikTok situation, where they're oftentimes looking at people who are in positions of power, like teachers and administrators, who are saying and doing things that really are clearly this person's belief system, and trying to put some accountability on that person. So
I mean,
it's odd.
I don't know how you can say that based on like one TikTok that like, nope, this captures the entirety of this person and their ideology.
Like, if there's a gay pride flag hanging in a classroom, that's a scandal.
Hey,
like, should that really be a scandal?
Fireball.
Like, if there's an American flag in a classroom, I'm fine with it. Why gay pride flag? I'm fine with it. It doesn't seem.
Jetsy Sussy, if your testicle looks like a human being's head, immediately contact your doctor. And if you are just coming from the doctor, go back and get a refund, because they did you dirty.
Seem like a big deal to me.
Look, I'm outing myself here. I'm not a regular watcher of libs of TikTok, okay? I don't watch everything that comes across libs of TikTok. The few that I've seen, though, and they've actually dug into the people, you find out that the person is, actively indoctrinating people in.
Oh, I'm not an avid libs of TikTok watcher, but I'm just saying they're doing God's work of exposing pedophiles
inside the classroom. So it's not just a
apparently
innocent remark, or a teacher that used the N-word in class to say that using the N-word was wrong, and then this person is being mischaracterized as a racist.
I guess
this is a person who actively believes in LGBT acceptance, and they're out there promoting that in their classroom.
So, but okay, LGBT acceptance, I think, is fine to teach in a classroom, because it's like, hey, people are different, accept that people are different. I agree that there might be a line where it's...
Man, I can't believe Anna Kasparian went on this show. It was like, oh yeah, they're God damn it. Like, went on this show and he's like, yeah, they're indoctrinating children to believe that homosexuality is fine. And it's like, yeah, and?
It's like, this is inappropriate that you crossed over. But my whole point about the anti-woke crusade is that it has now very clearly gone way past the line. Crusade. So there's this report that comes out every couple of years, this PEN America report on book bans. And the book bans have been really skyrocketing, and I think it's a direct result of this sort of moral panic.
I hate to interrupt. But I object to the framing of this as a book ban when you're talking about a book that is available anywhere outside of the school library. Like, it's just saying that this material is a little bit too racy for a school library. So it's not, they're not banning the books by any means.
Well, so here's my point though. A lot of the stuff are not over any line whatsoever, and I can give you examples where you'd agree with that. I mean, if you want me to give you a couple examples here, this is from The Hill in April. Quote, in an Ohio school district, officials recently intervened to prevent their children from hearing author James Tharp read his book, It's Okay to be a Unicorn, during a school visit. Illustrated with bright colors and rainbows, the story is an imaginative jaunt about a unicorn pretending
to... Yeah, like what under what circumstance does Adam here think that, like, a ban happens?
This guy is hiding his power level.
They're both hiding their power level so hard, dude. Like, I asked the first time that I saw them, like, oh, are these guys Nazis? Like, what's their deal? And it's just like, I'm not saying, look, it's not a book ban. They just think it's a little too racy for the schools. Like, what justification do you think is usually given for banning books? What justification do you think that Nazi Germany gave for banning books? Oh, well, these books are just too racy for the children. They'll be infected with the social contagion of gay homosexual degeneracy. Like, that's what they said. And Adam's just like saying it in like a softer tone,
to be a horse who has to summon the courage to reveal his true identity. The book, ostensibly about accepting our true identities and not being afraid of standing out, was prohibited after a single parent complained that the book and author had a gay agenda.
Well, I haven't seen the book, obviously, so I can't comment on that. Obviously, different parents are going to have different objections to different things. I mean, that's part of the democratic process. So, Sitch, you want to chime in on this?
Well, I mean, I guess the issue, like with the book ban stuff, is, you know, I'm assuming there are definitely, I'm sure, books that we would all agree shouldn't have been removed from a school. But I'm assuming there's also books that we would all agree should be removed from school. You know, everyone points to, I'm sure you've seen a million times, they always share this, like, some comic book that shows explicit scenes of, you know, children engaging in oral sex or something. That's what was in a lot.
Yeah, it's so bad that every conservative has shared it on their social media on sites that allow, you know, 14-year-olds. Yeah, it's so bad that they're sharing it on these sites.
That was in one of these books that was in a lot of these schools. And there's some Toni Morrison books that were removed from a lot of school curriculums that featured, you know, father raping his daughter and things of that nature, which, you know, I understand the artistic merit for some of these things, but I also understand a parent that's not necessarily wanting their child to learn about that in school.
I understand what you're saying completely, but I would just counter with, in this report, they lay out the exact numbers as to which books are being banned, what's in it that's leading for them to be banned. 44% of them are banned for violence, 38% are on mental health, and bullying and suicide and substance abuse. 30% is sexual health. 30% is death. 30% is race. 26% LGBTQ stuff. They only say it's a total of 24% is about like sex stuff. The other stuff is like violence, mental health, you know, things involving death or teen pregnancy or whatever. So it's really like we're trying to, like, you know, baby these kids who are coming to an age where they're going to have to start learning about not only crazy things in the world, but also, yeah, about their own bodies. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I started getting sex education in 6th grade in New York. And even that maybe felt like it was a borderline, like maybe they should have done it a little earlier because you were already starting to experience some things.
I mean, these kids are all on the internet. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you know, we have kids, right? What's in the school library, which, by the way, they're never even going to look at, is like the least of my concern with my children's upbringing. I think it speaks more, though, to what we're trying to get at, which is there is a moral panic on the right where there is a freak out about quote-unquote wokeness, which encompasses a lot of things, including quote-unquote transgender ideology, and has led to a lot of hysterical overreaction, which is translated into a lot of hysterical legislation, which is overtly like, and being struck down in courts as being against the First Amendment. I mean, a number of Ron DeSantis's laws have already been hit in federal court for, you know, violating people's First Amendment rights. If it was Democratic lawmakers, if it was Joe Biden doing the equivalent on the left, oh my God, would there be a freak out over the authoritarian crackdown on, you know, people's ability to say and do what they want?
Well, you're pitching the book bans as the right being authoritarian. And I just, like, you put these book bans, which, like I said, I don't even really think it's a book ban. It's a book prohibition in a public school, okay, which is more accurate. You put that up against something like trans women in sports, and it's not even on the radar. Like, it's not even close.
But wait, how? I mean,
whose
the number
fault
of
is that?
people
I mean, the numbers are kind of staggering. There's
was gonna say,
1,477 instances of books being banned in just 2022 and 2023. That's a 28% increase from the prior 6 months. And it includes, like, Holocaust books, man. There's a book, 2022, Mouse. It's a story of his father's experience in a concentration camp. They banned that.
Look, Kyle, you can get this out on a show, on a progressive talk show.
I do.
And talk about it. But I'm just saying, the general public, the normie voter out there, is not thinking about this stuff. They're thinking about other issues, like,
I agree,
that are much more prevalent in their lives than this issue.
They're also not thinking.
Okay, folks, I gotta take like a 15 to 20 minute long break. I will be right back, and we'll keep on trucking. Okay, folks. Sorry, I know I'm messing with our stees, but that's just how it's got to be right now. I'll be back in about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. Hope that is okay. I'm back, baby. Hey there, trans girl Jade. Thanks for tuning in. What did I miss? Oh, wrestling with the news. Hello, hello, hello. Didn't walk in on anything weird today? Nah, we just having a chill time. I'm playing XCOM 2. Anyone who donates a sub or subscribes over on riverboat.gg gets a character named after them. We currently need to feed more souls to the war effort. So if you would like to be part of it, donate, donate a sub or any amount beyond a sub, and you will also get a named character. Hello, Purple Dragon Guy. Are those pink Astros? They are trans-colored Astros, actually. So white and pink, and then blue lining. They used to have a blue cable too, but the cable crapped out. I love them. I love them. All right. Currently, we are in the middle of a mission infiltrating a chosen assassin's hideout. We need to kill the assassin. It's the one shot we got. And yeah. Also, we are listening to and reacting to Krystal, Kyle, and friends debate Sitch and Adam. And it is the dumbest thing I've watched in a while. I don't know how Krystal or Kyle keep getting involved in like stuff like this. I know Kyle is smarter than this. Krystal is, I thought smarter than this, but maybe not. Anyway, yeah, Trans Girl Jade, you can get like a customizable, like, there's like a way to customize your Astros in a way that like you can like tweak the colors and stuff. It's great. A little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth it. I mean, doesn't shock me, Krystal, after the Barbie rant? Wait, did Krystal rant about Barbie? Krystal is a grifter, that's why? I don't know if she's a grifter or not. I hesitate to call people grifters often, but I don't think I think that she could be a lot better at what she does. Let me put it that way. Krystal said January 6th insurrectionists should get therapy and not jail time. Okay, well, okay. You know what? I rescind all of my comments about Krystal in that regard. Look, I'm going to go on a rant about the Barbie movie, but I'm going to do it in a video essay form. And it's going to be about how the film is actually pro-patriarchy, and that makes me very upset. I can find the clip too. Go for it. But for now, we have about 30 minutes of this debate left, which for some reason has been allowed to be framed as which is more authoritarian, the woke or the non-woke, which is the dumbest possible formulation of this debate topic. Let's go.
About
trans
women in sports.
Trans people are not on their radar.
Affects, like,
they're like,
3
what's
people.
A trans person?
I mean, seriously though,
well, no, if they have
Hold
kids
on.
in school that are competing against trans women, I guarantee you they're thinking
but
about it.
That's
again,
true, but there's
hold
7
on.
of them in the
There's-
whole country. Go ahead.
I mean, they've literally passed laws in some states where there's like 1 kid that this law is about. And so I actually, listen, if you poll the public, there's no doubt the public is at this point on the side of trans women shouldn't be competing in girls' sports. Public is on your side on that. But is it the issue that they're voting on? Is it the thing that they're like worried about?
Well,
is it
I
trying to
don't
pay their bills and go about their lives? No,
Look, I don't
not even close.
I completely agree with you. Okay. They're not voting on this issue. The question though is the perception of which side is more authoritarian to the normie voter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about these books, a few books that are not allowed in the public library, I don't think the normie voter perceives that as a giant infringement on their rights by
you know,
authoritarians
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think
but
a lot
when-
of people don't even know about
Yeah,
these
but
book bans. I think you're right about that. But I think that, to bring up a point from earlier, they do know about Roe v. Wade being overturned, and we had like the test case of that in the midterms.
Yes.
And the Republicans really underperformed because that was viewed as an authoritarian move from a conservative Supreme Court.
Sitch and I both said that the abortion issue actually made the Democrats competitive because
and election denying, and the election denying. I think.
Yeah, all of the January 6th stuff, obviously. Because people do not want to give up their rights to abortion, and it's totally thrown all of that in flux. The question that I have is, why do you have President Biden afraid to just come out and say, I am against?
So Purple Dragon Guy, I am at a different location using different hardware to stream. So it could very well be that like just what I'm using is like broadcasting incorrectly. I don't know why it would be flashing green on your screen. I don't know how to fix that. I'm very sorry. But we will return to regularly scheduled programming and the machinery soon.
Abortion in the third trimester. I'm against late-term abortions.
That's what Roe v. Wade was, though. Roe v. Wade.
I know. Why doesn't he? Why does he support it openly?
Well, I mean, that's the traditional Democratic position. And Biden was actually supported the Hyde Amendment, and the Hyde Amendment mandates that federal tax money can't go towards any abortion.
I'm streaming from my partner's workshop.
So he's actually
where she designs lingerie, actually. So that would be why there's that behind me. But she's in the process of launching a lingerie business for trans people. So, yeah.
Even more conservative than your average Democrat on this, but the default Democratic perspective is first trimester, it's a right. Second trimester, there can be some health regulations. Third trimester, states can ban it if they so choose. So I think the traditional Democratic position is like the moderate position, and it's a position I happen to agree with. I don't want abortion at the 9th month, 2 days before the baby's going to be born, and I think, like you said, your average voter doesn't want that either.
I agree.
But I do think to the extent that there is, and I think you're right to identify some discomfort among Democratic politicians. And first of all, I mean, they just don't want to talk about that. And right now, because of the state of affairs in terms of the abortion landscape and Roe versus Wade being overturned, like that is not the live issue that's on the table. But I think you're correctly identifying that, the people who are most invested in these issues and are organized around it are the ones that have the most fringe and extreme positions. And that's certainly the case on the right, people who are pushing nationwide abortion bans and from the moment of conception and heartbeat bills and all of this stuff. And, the activists on the left, the pro-choice activists on the left, who do have what I consider to be extreme positions about, yes, no restrictions all the way up to the moment of birth. Those voices are disproportionately powerful in both political parties. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Well, we can talk about abortion because it's definitely a very important issue. I wouldn't really classify abortion as having like a woke issue. I mean, it's obviously an issue the Republicans have been and Democrats have been fighting over for 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just kind of like they're just using. Well, actually, I mean, it didn't really even have anything to do with the woke issue. It's just the Supreme Court.
Yeah, these guys want to vote for an absolute ghoul. They want to vote for Ron DeSantis. Like, their opinion on this is incredibly suspect at best.
Obviously, that Trump got the
I think
justice
that's fair.
he wanted. But just on the abortion thing, it's
okay, Purple Dragon Guy.
Is kind of
we
like
all
Adam
have
was
fried
laying
brains
out.
today.
There was a hearing on abortion where the Democrats had invited some experts to speak about abortion, and none of the experts that they invited would be willing to come out against third trimester abortion bans, which is a huge optical mistake for the Democrats. Because this was all the Republicans were playing. They were just playing clips of these, people testifying to Congress that were terrified of advocating for a third trimester abortion ban. And then I think there's something like 9 states currently that have abortions with no restrictions at all. And so the problem is, like, when we talk to right wingers, because we're both, pro-choice, but within limitations. When we talk to
you're both pro-choice, but you're going to vote for Ron DeSantis. Yeah, Ron DeSantis, a guy who's pledged to obliterate abortion. Like, yeah, sure, bud.
right wingers, all they do is they keep saying, the Democrats want abortions with no restrictions. And I'm like, I don't think that's the average position, because I don't think it is. But then they just point to these, 9 states that are doing this. And that's kind of the weird question is, and I think Joe Biden should come. I know he has in the past. I don't know if he's going to do it, this election. But I definitely think that Joe Biden needs to kind of lead on this issue, or some Democrat needs to lead on this issue and say, listen,
Well, I think
we're in favor of pro-choice, but it has to be, within reason.
Hillary actually debated this with Bernie, and it was
It's
one of the very
Jover.
few areas where I agree.
Hell
more with
yeah, I
Hillary
love the
than
attitude
Bernie.
wrestling
So I
with
do
the
think
news.
Democrats, even in the modern era, this is a position that they're repping. But I'd also point out that there are even more red states where they want to ban it from literally the moment of conception. So I think
Yes.
that to the extent that there's some extremism on this issue, I definitely think it's on both sides. I think it's more on the Republican side, but I don't think, to your point about the book bans too, I don't even think your average American knows about this portion of it. I mean, I have the poll numbers in front of me right here. The most popular position in the country is abortion should be legal under certain circumstances. This is a Gallup poll. That's the most popular position in the country by far. And then you have 13% of the country say it should be illegal in all circumstances. And you have 34% who say it should be legal under any circumstances. So, like, the country, I think, is squarely in that reasonable range on this issue. But also, I would disagree with everybody here in the sense that I do think abortion and I do think some of these other issues that we wouldn't normally put in the wokeness bucket, I do think they actually belong in there. I agree that they're not colloquially viewed as in there, and I'm like the only person saying this, but I think that anything in the realm of social issues, whether it's cultural stuff or legal stuff relating to social issues, I think all that belongs in the wokeness conversation. That means book bans, that means LGBTQ things, that means, whatever, fill in the blank, abortion, that means anything that could impact people's social lives. I think we should talk about it in the context of abortion, because any sort of authoritarian restrictions on those things, I think, is an overreach.
Well, and I do think, abortion, in my opinion, was probably the most central issue in terms of the midterm election. It sounds like you guys agree with that as well. But I think it ties into a whole basket of issues where it just felt like Republicans were way too out there for normal voters. And, one of those areas where I think Republicans have now really overreached in terms of the center of gravity in conversation and legislation is on, gay and trans issues. There was the initial conversation. You can even see this in the evolution of Ron DeSantis and how he talks about this
And Matt
stuff,
Walsh,
right?
all these guys.
The initial conversation was like worried about sports, which public is, on the side of being worried about sports. Now, you could argue how important that issue is, et cetera, but definitely majority position. Worried about, kids and transitioning. Complex issue. Very complicated. American people feel wary about this. There was like sort of solid ground there. And the framing of this for DeSantis was around parental choice, as we were discussing before. But now it's gone way beyond that, where it's, by the way, for some, increasingly vocal and also as embodied in some legislation, even adults, we're not sure we really want to let them transition, or we want to throw as many roadblocks as we can in their way. And that's where you lose the American public, because American people are like, listen, you're an adult, go do what you want to do, be you, live your life, make your choices. Who am I to say? Who am I to judge how you want to live your life? And then there's also been this, it sort of felt like the whole gay marriage situation was settled after Obergefell. Republicans just kind of were like, all right, I guess we lost this one. We're moving forward. That increasingly seems to be back on the table, as there's much more conversation about, no, actually, we don't accept gay marriage, and we're, opposed to people being gay, and we think it's degeneracy, groomer, et cetera, et cetera. So on those issues, it feels like there has been a real creep in terms of the rhetoric and the actual positioning. And I said, DeSantis is a perfect example. So when he first starts talking about the quote unquote don't say gay bill, it's all around parental choice. Well, now that he's running for president in a Republican primary where he's decided he wants to court the hard right, his campaign team is spinning up these videos touting how anti-trans he is and how he's the most anti-trans candidate in the race, which is obviously very different than how he was selling all of this before.
Yeah, I'm completely against all of that stuff. Like I said, I support gay marriage. I was against the ban of gay marriage in California. I think it was Prop 8 when it happened. Like, it totally disgusted me that California would do something like that. But I have to go back to what Sitch said about how, the cultural landscape really is both.
It really disgusted me when the Republicans I voted for tried to ban gay marriage. Disgusting. Yeah, sure.
Extremes on the left and the right are looking for an opportunity to pull their side further in their direction. And on the gay marriage thing, I'm completely against it, and I agree with what you're saying about how, you know, the Matt Walshes of the world have suddenly put gay marriage back on the table. But I do think the left, the Democrats, especially with their kind of blinders on to the potential downsides of
They're talking about back in the day, yeah.
of some of these affirmative care treatments for children, have opened up an opportunity for the Matt Walshes of the world to do that.
Yeah, because the Matt Walshes of the world definitely wouldn't have done that if trans people didn't want to do sports. Yeah, they never would have attacked trans people then.
And if we lived in a world where there wasn't this affirmative care model, that is, you know, I don't think the scientific understanding of what's going on here is enough to come out with the kind of declarations people on the left are coming out with of affirmative care, then I don't think the Matt Walshes of the world would be able to do what they're doing with gay marriage. I think the left opened up that opportunity for them.
So, all right, so let me respond to that. So, like Krystal said, early on in this debate, it was framed around like, hey man, look, we're just trying to protect kids.
Right.
We don't think you should be genitally mutilating children or whatever. This was the line that they were going with. But over time, that was like mission creep, and eventually got to the point where people like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles had effectively admitted, even for adults, I don't even really think this should be allowed. I interviewed Jordan Peterson and asked him straight up, like, do you think, you know, trans healthcare should be banned even for adults? And he was like, I don't know. He gave me an I don't know answer, which I thought was crazy. I thought that's a slam dunk easy. Like, of course it should be allowed for adults. But even when it comes on the legal front, like I have a New York Times article here, many states are trying to restrict gender treatments for adults too. And then they go on to explain that in at least 5 states, actually the number's higher now, I think it's 8 or 9, Republican legislators are proposing bills that would restrict gender affirming care. Some states up to anyone under 21, other states, anybody under 26, they want to do it. So I think there's real mission creep, and they're really overreaching. And when I looked up how like the trans healthcare.
See, but this framing is wrong. It's not mission creep. It's not overreach. The initial thing was overreach. And they are going to continue to overreach until they are stopped. It's not mission creep. Their mission is to take as many rights away from trans people as they can. That's the mission. It's not mission creep. That was the plan from the beginning, Kyle.
Situation already works in this country. I was actually very surprised to see how nuanced it is. Now, I know in Europe it's different and they're more aggressive and there's plenty of things to pick apart and critique there. I've always been sympathetic to people who say, look, when you're dealing with a minor, this is a totally different question. I mean, adults could do what they want. Minors, it's a much more complex question. I don't
know
if
I would enjoy
but the way
debating
it works
these
right now
assholes.
Is, first of all, you need a
I'd get
psychological
mad.
evaluation to determine whether a child has gender
Which
dysphoria.
might not lend itself
right off
well
the bat, by the way,
to
I totally agree with that.
the
I don't think it should
optics
just
of
be you
my
walk in, hey,
conversation-
like, I kind of feel it.
conversation with
Okay,
them.
let's go. No, I think there should be a psychological evaluation. That's point number one. Then they do puberty blockers, which are not used until after there are signs of early puberty. So that could be anywhere from age 8 to 13 for girls and a year or two later for boys. They have to be used. They've been used for decades to treat what's called precocious puberty, which is basically a medical condition that causes puberty to begin very early. The effects of that are reversible, other than bone density might be an issue. They may cause a decrease in bone density, but then that reverses when the drugs are stopped. And then according to the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, they say hormones start at 16 or older, surgery is 18 and older, and breast removal surgery could be 17 or older. So when I looked at the way the guidelines actually worked right now in the country, I was like, wow, this is actually very like nuanced and reasonable. And so I thought any attempt from legislators to sort of mess with this, I think is overly political, and they're sort of doing the mass hysteria thing as if there's like thousands and thousands of children at 8 years old who are being, you know, castrated or whatever. I just don't think that's accurate. And I think that the way
Okay,
it
Kyle
works now is
arrives at the
actually pretty solid. Would you
correct
disagree with that?
conclusion here.
Yeah, I would disagree with it. Well, you know, we
Yeah, I would disagree with that. Again, treating these people as if they are actually moderate conservatives, I think is a huge mistake. I think ceding the ground to like this being a woke versus anti-woke debate, is like the first misstep, and the second part is treating these people as if they are actually moderate conservatives. These are the same types of guys I've debated in the past who, like, you're like, oh yeah, come on, yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a moderate conservative, and then you talk to them for like an hour, and then they're like, hey, can I make a confession? I'm actually I actually identify as a phalangist, and you're like, oh, what's a phalangist? And they're like, well, it's the Francisco Franco's political party in Spain in the 1930s. It's just like, oh, okay. When you said moderate conservative, what you meant was fascist. Gotcha. Yeah.
When you're talking about the book bans and everything earlier, I think a lot of what is fueling this, and even the overreach and the things I would agree with, is the fear that a lot of parents have for their child, quote, becoming trans or whatever. I think that is kind of what's driving a lot of this. And I do have a lot of questions and concerns with sort of the way in which, the American model is focusing on things. Like you have in Europe, you have, I think it's Finland, Sweden, UK, and Norway, and maybe France. I think they've all stopped using the affirmative care model, which is
they have not, by the way.
Kind of what you were laying out. And the
Wait,
reason
what
for
I just
that,
laid out is affirmative care? That's affirmative care, what I described?
Yeah, well, that's a part of the affirmative care model. Yes. The other
This
part
seemed
of the
more nuanced. I thought
Canadian
affirmative care is
Brunch.
you walk in and they're like, all right, we're good to go.
Well, so the affirmative care model is essentially that you're not really challenging someone's identity at all. You're just sort of like saying, oh, well, let's see, like, we'll let you kind of dictate the terms of kind of what your identity is, essentially. And it goes down the model pathway that you're talking about, where you give someone puberty blockers, and then you give them cross-sex hormones and all these other things. And there's a couple problems with that model. The biggest one, to me, which hasn't really been addressed I don't think it's ever been addressed to the science, is that before they started giving kids puberty blockers, in the 2000s and earlier, when they looked at children that
People were using puberty blockers since the 1970s, so this is already incorrect.
were going to clinicians and were diagnosed with gender dysphoria, there was something like a massive realm of 60 to 90% of kids would desist once they went through puberty. So that means that 69% of kids before...
Also, this study he's referencing, the desistance was lumped in with simply not returning to the clinic with no follow-ups, meaning that some of these patients would just go to other clinics, or also some of these kids, because the standards back then were very different and less strict, were often lumped in with gay kids. But standards are different now than they were back then, because gender dysphoria is better understood now than it was back then. Yeah, also the desistance was before puberty blockers. Yeah, before they were even on them.
They gave kids puberty blockers, would be identified as having gender dysphoria, and then when they went through puberty, those feelings of gender dysphoria would go away. But then once they start giving kids puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, that number drops to like somewhere in the realm of like 10 to 20%. And so to me, that's very troubling, because you're like, well, wait a minute. We don't want to have a situation where giving the kids puberty blockers, having them socially transition, is preventing a natural desistance for children who have gender dysphoria or believe they have gender dysphoria. And this question hasn't really been answered in American medicine. And not only that, but even in I think in Canada there's a doctor named Kenneth Zucker who, I mean, this is a doctor who literally worked, I think he was the head of the APA's work group for actually writing the guidelines for gender dysphoria for children in the DSM-5. And he had a clinic where he was doing non-affirmative care model treatment, which was basically what everyone used to do. And it got shut down essentially by trans activists who were saying that he was doing conversion therapy. And he got fired from doing that. And he actually even was able to sue the school that fired him for defamation and won, because he wasn't doing, quote, conversion therapy.
So let me get Krystal in here. I just wanted to point out, the first thing that I came across when I tried to figure out, hey, how is this done in the U.S. right now? The very first thing, and I could send you the PBS article if you want that goes into detail about all this stuff, is they say you need a psychological evaluation to determine whether the child has gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
which sounds to me like they'll say,
How
hey,
you
if
doing,
don't have
Canadian
it,
brunch?
no, we're not going to give you the treatment, which is something I agree with. So I don't know if what you're saying is I don't support the affirmative care model and this isn't the affirmative care model, but whatever you want to call what I just described, that's the thing that I think makes sense, and that's the thing that I would agree with. Go ahead, Chris.
But to me, this all misses what to me is the bigger question is who should be deciding these things. Because I don't think anyone here will disagree that the science is, science is oftentimes complicated, contradictory, nuanced, varies case by case depending on the person. And so do you want doctors and families to be making these decisions, or do you want like Sarah Huckabee Sanders to be making these decisions based on the politics of the moment and what she thinks that, her Republican base is going to want to see?
Or trans activists, because obviously you had Ken Zucker, who is a clinician in a treatment facility, who should be making the decisions. I think we would all agree. A scientist who is literally shut down by trans activists.
I agree with that.
So
and he was able to go to, I don't know anything about this case, by the way, but you said he was able to go to court and win. So it seems like,
Well, he's able to win defamation. He's still,
He's still not being able to do scientific research is what we need.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about this case either, but as you're describing it, I agree that it's sort of egregious. It sounds like we're all coming to, ironically, the enlightened centrist.
Yeah. Yeah, look, this is the moderate conservative playbook. Make sure that you know something niche enough that your debate opponent won't know about, and so then rely on their charitability to essentially be like, oh, yeah. Well, I don't know anything about it, so sure, you might be right. He was doing fucked up shit in the clinic. Yeah, he was. He was, like... The guy they're talking about is like, basically a monster.
Position here, where we're saying...
Also, you both have computers in front of you. Google the guy that they're talking about.
Hey... do a real analysis, determine if there's actually gender dysphoria, and then proceed from there.
Yeah, and doctors and families should be the ones making the decisions, not, banned from certain treatments by the state in a blanket fashion. I mean, I do feel...
And not trans.
Oh, he was doing conversion therapy.
In this case, we're talking about the authoritarianism of the left. If the trans activists...
And the right.
Well, yes, but in this specific case, I think it's the left. I doubt it's right-wing authoritarians that are shutting down Ken Zucker's clinics.
Right, but you're talking about one clinic. We're talking about bans that happen across an entire state.
5 states that are banning, transitioning even for adults. That's what I'm talking about. And actually, I think it's more than that now.
I want to address the affirmative care thing because that's really important.
Go ahead.
So I agree that obviously a person should have to go to a psychiatrist or something.
Just real quick. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Boom. Oh, weird. Interesting note. Closure of the CAMH Gender Identity Clinic for Children begins with Ontario conversion therapy ban. That's so weird. In January 2015, members of the Rainbow Health Ontario Provincial Health Promotion and Navigation Organization approached CAMH expressing their concerns regarding Zucker's clinic. Rainbow Health Ontario submitted a review of academic literature and clinical practices for transgender youth, and expressed concern that the Gender Identity Clinic was not following accepted practices. Others linked the Gender Identity Clinic's practices to suicide of transgender youth caused by conversion therapy and referenced the high-profile case of Leila Alcorn, a transgender teen from Ohio. In February 2015, CAMH ordered an external review of its Gender Identity Clinic for children and teens. A report from March 2015 stated that the review was the result of growing online scrutiny of CAMH for alleged conversion therapy practices. The same report stated that the clinic would not be accepting new patients until the review is finished. In March 2015, Ontario Provincial Parliament introduced the Affirming Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Act, aimed at banning conversion therapy practices. In June of 2015, the legislation was passed unanimously into law by the provincial parliament. The law made LGBT conversion therapy illegal to provide to minors and removed it from public health insurance coverage for adults. After the bill was passed into law, CAMH stated that they welcomed the unanimous support for the bill. Okay. The external reviewers from the Gender Identity Clinic and child and adolescent psychiatrist Suzanne Zinnick of Halifax and Antonio Pignatiello of Toronto. They invited stakeholders to comment on their experiences in the clinic. In November 2015, the external review was published. The review noted numerous strengths of the clinic, but also described it as an insular entity with an approach dissimilar from other clinics, and described it as being out of step with current best practices, including the WPATH SOC version 7. They also raised concerns about clinicians asking age-inappropriate questions. After the review, CAMH shut down the clinic and fired Zucker. So this isn't the government coming in and shutting down Zucker. This is the wider health organization that controlled his clinic shutting it down because of what they found in their external review. Kwame McKenzie, medical director of CAMH's Child, Youth, and Family Services, said, "We want to apologize for the fact that not all of the practices in our childhood gender identity clinic are in step with the latest thinking, and that Zucker is no longer at CAMH." McKenzie said that Zucker's treatments were against the center's guidelines. Prior to the review, he stated that there existed two schools of thought on such therapy for children under 11 among professionals. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's like, okay, yeah, cool.
Thing of that nature to get.
I don't know, man. Just if you don't know anything about it, you got a laptop, just fucking Google it.
Diagnosed with gender dysphoria. The problem is, if the only acceptable way in America for clinicians or for psychiatrists to diagnose children is through the affirmative care model, which I believe is fundamentally flawed from the beginning, then it doesn't matter if they're getting the therapist saying that they have gender dysphoria, because they're following a flawed model that is experimental,
solution to that
hasn't been tested.
Yeah.
What do you see?
I agree with you. I'm just skeptical that it works like that in all cases already. That's the
So
only
what
point I'm making.
is
Go
it
ahead,
like
go ahead.
legislation that's the solution? What do you see as being the solution to that?
Like
How do
just
you
letting the psychiatrists do their job? It sounds like to me, right? Is that your point, Sitch? Just like let the psychologists do their job without any pressure from either trans activists or Republican legislature? Is that the idea?
Like theoretically, obviously, yeah.
Theoretically,
the best case scenario would be, and this has never been done, which is wild to me. Like when we had COVID, which was a virus, you could see a virus under a microscope. It was very clear. Like we knew that it existed, unless you believe conspiracies about 5G towers or whatever. You could see the virus under the microscope, and even with that, when they were testing the vaccine, they'd have two groups of people. They give one group the vaccine. They don't give one group anything, or they give them a placebo, right? That's how you test like all these treatments. That's how you test medicine. We've never done this with the affirmative care model.
We have actually. It's called one group of trans kids doesn't get the care, and you can look at the health outcomes for that group. And then the other group does get that care, because the vast majority of trans youth never got that care, or at least the vast majority of trans youth over like the last, 20 years haven't gotten that care. Yeah, again, these people act like the diagnosis process is kid walks into a gender clinic all by themselves and like snaps their fingers, and instantly there are 5 doctors at their side offering them a variety of differently flavored hormone pills that are designed to taste like Sour Patch Kids. Like that's not how this works. Of course it's not how this works.
Despite the fact that these wild differences in desistance exist. They've never done this with the affirmative care model, despite the fact that the number of kids, identifying as having gender dysphoria has exploded. And to me, that seems so irresponsible that we're just basically doing this treatment that's never been tested in some kind of, placebo group, control group study. And we're just accepting that this is supposed to be the case. So I agree with you, like theoretically, I would hope that the medicine and that the doctors could do this on their own. But the problem is, if they're not doing it on their own, what do we do? Do we just kind of sit there and try to pressure them socially? Or do you need the government to kind of say, whoa, we need to do something about this?
So
what law would you put on the books? Only 16 and up can, get this treatment? Only 18 and up? Like what law would you propose?
I mean, unfortunately, because I think that gender dysphoria is real, and I do think people are essentially born with it, and I do think kids can have it, but I think that the false positives are going to end up outweighing the true hits, and so I do think that they should probably have a at least a 16, but probably
Really, what I gotta ask, what's the evidence you have here about all these false positives? Because the evidence we do have of people regretting going through transitional care is that over 99% of them do not regret it. So this is absolutely just a lie. We have that evidence already, and that evidence shows that you're wrong.
an 18-year-old ban on giving kids puberty blockers and anything like that.
Yeah, I think our core disagreement is that I don't agree that the false positives are going to outweigh the real positives. So that's like the core of our disagreement. But I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
Because the detransition rate is so low.
Yeah, that's true too. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Adam.
but the thing is with the detransition rate, like when they talk about the detransition rate, they're talking about people who, like from the long-term studies, who most of them transitioned as adults, or they transitioned before the affirmative care model was in place. We don't really have long-term studies for people that are going through this current.
How is the affirmative care model different from the model that that was able to like treat kids? Again, this is like boogeyman level thinking. Oh, it's scary because it has a different name. No, it's just you're asking the kid, questions about their gender. They show consistency over the course of several years. You then allow them puberty blockers. The puberty blockers give them more time to think about it. Then they start taking HRT, or they stop taking puberty blockers and just go with their natural puberty, or they go with the hormone replacement therapy, puberty. And then, we know what happens because we have a bunch of people in their 20s now, and maybe early 30s too, who've been through this process, and 99% of them do not regret it. Jesus.
Yeah. So in other words, we'll see.
Method.
We'll see. I mean, look, my thoughts have always been, if you're somebody who's just like latching onto this as an identity and it's just like a phase you're going through, that's not the kind of person who's going to end up chopping off their dick and balls.
But
right?
that's the
way
wait, you say that.
Well put, yes. Kyle.
Very strongly, I say that.
I know,
very strongly.
There's a lot of the ideas around social contagion have been very well studied, and we've seen that there's been a massive amount of social contagion in something like
what a great way for Kyle to phrase that when talking about children.
Suicide, which is more extreme than removing parts of your body. Or we've also seen this has been repeated with in the 90s and in the 80s. There was a panic around people getting false memories, where they go to psychiatrists and they go through hypnosis or whatever, or just by talking to psychiatrists, and they've like, oh, I remember all these, memories of being sexually abused as a child by my parents. Or there was another thing where there's a panic where all these people thought that they were part of some sort of satanic ritual, and they could swear that they had been in a cage in kindergarten and that they had, witnessed people do all these satanic rituals. So, and then even before that, there was this whole panic where like the numbers of people identifying as having multiple personalities exploded because a couple movies came out that were like really focusing on multiple personalities. So, and then it's also just, we know with like the placebo effect. So just the idea, like, yes, there's going to be a lot of people that can definitely go down this pathway, especially, and here's something
that's kind of disturbing. But I think they'll socially transition. Again, this is our core disagreement. I think.
Yes, so many evil doctors. Do you think though that maybe there's a big difference between like investigators of a crime and how they might treat children versus like, doctors? Like not just like single one-off doctors, but like multiple mental health professionals as well as multiple like practicing doctors? Do you think 4 doctors are just going to be all in on this evil plot, or are going to be bamboozled by the same like weird fixation to like get confessions of crimes out of these kids, which by the way was fueled by the Satanic Panic, which was also a conservative movement?
think they might like dress as the opposite sex or whatever. But once you get to the point where you're taking like pharmaceutical drugs and you're considering chopping off your fucking private parts,
Come
like that's
on,
another
dude.
level that I think people are going to be like,
Well,
hey,
but-
you know what? Let me test this out a
I mean,
little bit before I
again,
go
this
further.
gets back to like I think there are reasonable debates and disagreements to have about and people who are doing this care, even within amongst themselves, they're having debates about what is the right care protocol and how do we do this that's best for the young people that we are dealing with here. To me, the question comes back to who are the people who should be making those decisions, and the core discussion we're having here is about which side is more authoritarian. And I just can't put some trans activists shutting down one clinic on anywhere near the
Again, it's not again. You're taking them at their word. The reality is, some trans activists raised concerns, and then an external review showed that those concerns were valid. So yeah, then the clinic was shut down by the agency that ran it. So
same level as entire states for political reasons telling doctors what they can and can't do.
So
a lot of these.
there's
Go ahead, Sitch.
well, okay. So another thing that's kind of troubling is that before the affirmative care model came out, and before kind of like the craze, the trans craze, if you want to call it that, like recently has sort of started.
Trans craze.
The number ratio between girls and boys having gender dysphoria, it was like 4-to-1 boys. So there's 4 times as many boys as girls identifying as trans and having gender dysphoria. And now the number is 1-to-1. And there's been no explanation for that increase in girls.
It could be, just throwing it out here, that there are various social forces in our world that perhaps make it easier or harder for one group of people or another group of people to come out and get the medical support that they need. That I don't know. I feel like there's quite a bit of evidence to that effect, actually.
Girls, except that it's been well documented and well known in science and psychology that girls are.
Yeah, it's so weird that the number of trans people between trans women and trans men would be roughly 1-to-1. Did you guys make the goal last night? We broke 50%. But we'll be doing another small segment while we finish up Vita Carnis reacting. We'll be doing another small fundraising stream on Tuesday, August 1st. So y'all can get excited for that if you'd like to.
Far more affected by social contagion and social pressures. And so we kind of get into this realm, and also for girls, and you're talking about like, why would someone cut off parts of their genitalia or whatever? It's actually not that confusing, especially for girls who are kind of exploiting the numbers. When you're a young girl, you start going through puberty, you feel weird, right? You have all these chemicals in your brain. You're like, oh, I feel depressed. I feel.
Oh yeah, it's not. Oh, it's so. Oh yeah, it's not so. It's not so weird for girls, huh? Yeah, because girls are just completely different animal.
Weird. I feel anxious. I never had these feelings before. Maybe men are staring at me. Maybe men are looking at me sexually. This makes me feel uncomfortable. You take puberty blockers. Oh, maybe those feelings go away. You start taking testosterone, which is a natural mood booster. Oh, you suddenly feel great. It's very easy to see how someone could accidentally go down this pathway. I don't think it's as much of a stretch or as confusing as you would think it would be.
I understand all your arguments.
This is just
misogyny. I fully
misogyny?
take them in. I think that's just a core disagreement that we have. I think mostly all the noise around this is kind of a moral panic more than a social contagion. And I think that what's happening with those numbers, as you just described, my perspective on it, and I know you disagree with this, is that I just think people are feeling more comfortable to finally come out of the closet and they are actually trans, in a similar trend that we saw back when we stopped being so repressive towards gay people. So,
why is it not an equal proportion? Why is it that girls have this massive increase but boys don't?
Well, you even pointed out that the increase in trans boys is like brought it to parity with where trans girls already were. So you already pointed that out. Like you pointed that fact out already. It's not difficult to understand. I think the difference is possibly the fact that like there have been a lot more trans women who have had the financial ability to transition due to like going through life perceived as a man. There are definite economic differences, especially as we look farther back in time. It could also be that like to some degree it might have been easier for trans men to pass in the past. Just pointing out like some like the doctor who invented I think the doctor who invented the C-section was a trans man, if I'm recalling that correctly. Like and that wasn't found out until after his death. And like but you know this was before surgery or hormones or anything, you know, like. So, you know, there are a lot of different reasons, obviously, at play here. But I would hazard a guess it's not as huge of a mystery as Sitch is trying to claim it is.
Well, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But, you know, again, I just think the core of our disagreement is I think this is mostly a moral panic. And I agree with you that there's going to be some people who jump onto a fad. Again, I just don't think they're going to be the ones to jump to surgery. Adam, I know you've been trying to jump in.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead,
I want to make it clear here. I think the detransition rates that Krystal cites are from like the 60s, when only adults were transitioning, and a much smaller number.
No. As far as I know, there isn't a study from the 60s. What the fuck are you talking about?
Of people were transitioning, right? So a lot of people trot out those numbers thinking that it makes a difference today when we have a bunch of children transitioning, who obviously we know children go through all kinds of fads growing up. So it's a completely different situation. I don't think that that's good evidence. I
mean, but it is evidence.
And I guess we'll find
The evidence we have. But hold on. In a review of 27 studies involving almost 8,000 teens and adults who had transgender surgeries in Europe, the US, and Canada, 1%.
Oh, wait, did she actually fact check him? I missed that because of sounds.
I don't think that that's good evidence. I mean,
but it is evidence.
And I guess we'll find
the evidence we have. But hold on. In a review of 27 studies involving almost 8,000 teens and adults who had transgender surgeries in Europe, the US, and Canada, 1% on average expressed any regret. For some, that regret was temporary, but a small number did go on to have. I mean,
damn, this is the best thing said in this entire debate. You know what? For all of Krystal's faults, good on her for this one. Okay.
You could say like we need a better.
I would
AP
imagine
News.
I would imagine the vast, like we've dug into those studies.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, that's what we're saying.
But you can't like invent the results in your head of what you think is going to happen, and that's going to be better than what actually exists. But it all comes back again to this core point.
This is a radical treatment, and making it without really any confirmatory evidence for the current situation that we're in is basically flying in the dark.
Look, if you're right, we will see that there will come a point where the detransition rate overtakes the number of people who continue with the treatment.
But again,
so we'll be able to find out in 10, 20 years who's right. I mean, I think that's basically the best thing we can come to right now.
I think it's fine
I agree.
to say, I think it's fine to say we have some questions and we're concerned. If we, our kids, we wouldn't do it. Whatever, that's fine. That's for you to decide. But again, it's for you to decide and families to decide and doctors to decide and do your own research and come up with your own theories of the case versus the state to enforce on doctors what they're allowed to do, even in some instances when it comes to adults.
Yeah.
And that's to me where the authoritarianism, it's fine to like read these studies and have questions about, well, why have these ratios changed? And I don't know that I buy these detransition rates. And I think this program care isn't the right one, et cetera. That's all fine. But I don't want the state to tell me, no, this is what we've decided, and this is the only protocol that you're allowed to follow.
And I will say, just in your defense, Sitch, in particular, because you're the one who made this policy point, I do think that if we were to poll it, my instinct is most Americans might fall with the 16 and up. You can make that decision, and I just want to say I think that's way better than the Matt Walshes of the world who have basically said you should criminalize all this treatment for everybody. You know,
Sure,
so
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
all right,
Matt,
go
I mean,
ahead.
Matt
You didn't have to qualify that, Kyle. You really didn't have to.
Walsh, he's obviously coming at this from his religious perspective. Obviously, I don't agree with the religious perspective. I learned about gender dysphoria many years ago before it was a big thing when I was taking my psych classes, and so I thought it was kind of weird when all this stuff kind of became a political issue, and seeing it kind of become the culture war issue was very bizarre to me. And I'm just focused on making sure that people get the best treatment. And you have situations. I was just listening the other day. There's a very interesting interview with a researcher named Michael Bailey, who was researching some of these topics and about gender dysphoria. And because he wasn't, because he was actually questioning affirmative care and doing some of these other things, essentially trans activists were pressuring the journal that his article was published in to retract the article and things of that nature. And it's just, I agree that, like, theoretically, I would like for this to not be solved through legislation. I mean, I think it's generally you don't want the government to be legislating, medical practices and things of that nature. You'd hope that the doctors and the researchers and scientists could come to the best conclusion. However, even though the regret rates are very low, and you look at the desistance rates, went from being super high desistance rates to now super low desistance rates, which is incredibly troubling and never been tested. If that's not being tested, I don't know what you do, because you get into the situation where, like, I hate to use a crude example, but you get in the situation of, in the past when they were handing out lobotomies like candy and they were lobotomizing people left and right.
This is War of the Chosen
We
wrestling with
might
the
have
news.
hoped back then that the government had done something to say, okay, you can't do this without actually, showing effective evidence. So I don't know, like, when you talk about, like, you prefer it not to be legislation, I agree, but if it turns out, as you said, Kyle, like 10 years from now, trans regret rate explodes. I mean, everyone's
I don't
going
think
to look
that'll
back at
happen,
this
to
and
be
say,
clear.
why did we allow this to happen?
Right, I don't think that'll happen. I'm saying that's what
If
you're
it does,
saying will happen,
right.
and we'll find out if it does. Right, and
Sure.
basically, look, at the end of the day, I
Yeah, it's such a great argument you made there. Something that can only be disproven 20 years from now. Okay.
think that'll more or less settle the debate, right? Like among
Yes.
reasonable people, they go, okay, well, yeah, so
A lot
it
of
either didn't happen
casualties.
or it did happen, but then you'll be able to adjust from there moving forward. Anyway,
Sure.
we've been going for a really long time. We really appreciate you guys joining us. I think it was a fun debate. I love diving into all this stuff. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Sitch, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, well, we're at the Sitch and Adam Show on YouTube. Check it out. We stream every Sunday and Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Nice. And they had a great review of the Barbie movie that I highly recommend.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surrounded by Barbie
The
haters. I
important
haven't seen
issues
it.
here.
I'm the enlightened centrist on the issue of Barbie, okay? I'm agnostic on it, but I have some Barbie haters
Did you
around
guys
me.
see Oppenheimer too?
Not
No,
yet.
not
no.
yet.
Yeah.
That one, I thought that one was well done. It is a little too long. Like there was some stuff they definitely could have trimmed up. I
A
feel like it's always
Christopher
an
Nolan
ego
movie
trip.
that's too wrong. That's
I
too
know,
long.
like-
I can't imagine such a thing.
I always feel like it's an ego trip. They're like, you will sit through our 3 hours of everything we want to put on the
totally.
screen. But it is very good and very thought provoking. So I recommend.
Indeed.
All right.
Everybody check out my favorite enlightened centrists, Sitch and Adam. Thanks for joining us.
This
Nice
was
to
a
meet
lot
you
of
guys.
fun.
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
having us on. Yeah.
Our
Enjoyed it
pleasure.
too.
Our pleasure.
Hi.
Barbie is really fun. I would recommend seeing it. I just can't recommend its politics. And I'll talk about that more as we go on. But chat, we've been streaming for 2.5 hours. If you enjoyed the stream so far, please consider dropping some subs or donos, because so far, only Paladin Lost has supported the stream today, and I would appreciate any support you guys can send my way. Oh, Catalina Gearbox, you also supported the stream with 100 biddies over on Twitch. My bad. How you doing? Hey, Doodle Burb. You rise. I heard nothing in that debate that sounded centrist. Yeah. Just heard conservative virtue signaling. Well, yeah, I feel like I'm fairly confirmed in my belief that both of these clowns are hiding their power levels. Have you ever played RimWorld? I love RimWorld. I love RimWorld. Won't be getting paid until the end of August. It's okay. It's okay, Alexa Sick. Wait, you gotta wait until the end of August to get paid? Hot damn. All right, folks, pushed myself a lot yesterday to get that like 8-hour long stream. Today you're only getting a 2.5-hour long stream out of me. And we're gonna raid into. We're just gonna raid into Rhizome. Rhizome's a comfy little guy. It's okay to take care of yourself. Yeah, I'm doing my best. I'm trying. And you guys think I'm an okay streamer, right? I'm doing a good job, right? Thanks for the stream. Hell yeah. Anytime. Have to sleep anyway. Good night. Good night, Robber Adset. You good? You good. Good night, everybody.